back to Miss Cindy's kitchen. We're going to show you how to make a family favorite of Snickerdoodles. And this is from a Betty Crocker cookbook. Betty Crocker has a website that has all kinds of good recipes on it. And you can Google Snickerdoodles, and I'll try to have a link to it in our description for this episode. And also, before we go on, please like and subscribe for our channel. And in the comment section, please leave me any feedback or questions or possible content for future episodes for our channel. So, anyway, since I'm making cookies for both family and to give to friends and coworkers, I'm doubling this recipe. The original recipe calls for 2 3/4 cups of flour, which when doubled is 5 1/2. And I know all of you back in school were saying, when am I ever going to use math in the real world? Well, if you have to multiply a recipe, it comes in handy. So, 5 1/2 cups of flour, and then it calls for cream of tartar, and that would be a total of 4 teaspoons of cream of tartar, and then 2 teaspoons of baking soda, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And that's the measurements for making a double batch. And I've already combined them in this little dish, and I'm going to mix it with the flour. So you want to mix all your dry ingredients together. So that's good for now. So I'm going to set that aside. And then to the mixing bowl, I'm going to add a cup of butter. Got a little soft while it was waiting.
I just slid right off the wrapper.
Yeah. It's kind of a catch-22. I have to let the butter sit out to soften. And then I also have to hide it from a dog that will steal butter. So, 2 sticks of butter. So this is for a double recipe. So it's 2 sticks, which is 1 cup of butter. And 1 cup of shortening, which I've measured out into this, can't remember what it's called, but it's a nice thing for measuring like peanut butter and shortening and anything that's sticky. You push it down to where the line marker is and put your ingredient in, and then you just push the plunger and it dumps right into the bowl.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I sold Pampered Chef ages ago, and I still have lots of cool cooking items from then. So now we've got a cup of butter, a cup of shortening, and 3 cups of sugar. And that is for a double batch of Snickerdoodles. So I'm going to combine the butter and the sugar. And then we need to let that cream together for at least 5 minutes, sometimes up to 10. So generally when I'm baking, I'll get the butter and sugar going first so it can whip together. And then in the meantime, I will get all the other ingredients together. So, after these are all done, we're going to roll them in cinnamon sugar, which is actually a 1/2 cup of sugar and 4 teaspoons of cinnamon.
Oh, okay.
So, we get the big can of cinnamon from Costco because we bake a lot. So after we're done, we're going to make the dough balls kind of like we did when we made the whipped shortbread, where we scoop out the dough balls and then we roll them, and then we'll roll them in cinnamon sugar and then bake them. So you kind of do it in an assembly line process similar to the way we did the other cookies. So I'm going to pause the mixer and scrape the sides. Because you want the mixture to start looking light and creamy. It's not quite there yet, so let's whip it a little bit more. But at least 5 minutes. You have to let your butter and sugar cream together for at least 5 minutes until it gets to be pale yellow. And granted, this is a mixture of butter and shortening, so it's going to be lighter than a full butter recipe. But the texture of the cookies really would be a lot better if you let the butter and sugar properly cream together. And it does take time, so you just got to be patient. And After this is fully creamed, we'll be adding 4 eggs to the batter. And now I always put eggs cracked into something else besides directly into the mixing bowl, because if you for some reason get a shell, you won't contaminate your whole batter. So just crack your eggs into a separate container.
And you can do all this while the mixture is...
Right. I generally start with just the butter and sugar mixture, well, in this case butter, sugar, and shortening, so that can cream for a while before adding the other ingredients. See, like this eggshell fell apart. If I was putting this directly into the mix, it would get in there. So this I can just pluck it out, because for some reason this shell is very fragile. I don't think these chickens had much calcium in their diet.
Yeah.
So that's why you always put your eggs into a separate container. And I think I see a shell down at the bottom already. I'll use my fork that I used to stir the recipe. Now it's much easier to get a shell out of a separate bowl than it will be. I'll have to get that out as I'm pouring it. It's too far down at the moment. So, I'm going to add the eggs one at a time and let it incorporate a little bit. Just do it one at a time, and then now I'm going to try to get that shell out because I don't like crunchy eggs. There we go. So a little bitty piece of shell, you would never have seen that if you dumped it directly into the mixing bowl when you were cracking it.
Imagine that was in a cookie and you bit down and it zinged your tooth.
Yeah, well, I don't think it really hurt your teeth, but it just would be an unpleasant experience. So just add the eggs one at a time until they get fully incorporated. So that's that. And I'm going to stop the mixer for just a moment and scrape down the sides. Make sure all the egg and sugar and shortening and butter is all incorporated nicely to itself. So your butter mixture is going to look like a light creamy yellow, pale yellow color. You definitely want to have fluffy butter and shortening before you add your egg. So now that the egg is fully incorporated, I'm going to gradually add in the flour. And I'm just going to do it like this, gradually. And kind of wait until the powdery flour is absorbed into the wet part of the dough.
And what is the speed you're mixing this in?
I generally put it on low when I'm adding ingredients, and medium to mix it all together. But you don't want to put it on high because the more stress you put on the dough, it can make the food tough.
Ooh.
Just however you need to do it to get everything incorporated together. Now that we're about halfway through the flour mixture, I'm going to stop and stir and scrape down just to make sure that everything has gotten mixed in. I don't feel any pockets of flour at the bottom, so far so good. And get the stuff off the side. And when you're scraping the sides of the bowl, scrape it onto the beater. That way it'll get incorporated into the batter better. So get that going again. Sometimes the flour mixture gets caught up in the beater. So if you spin it a little faster, it lets go and gets into the rest of the batter faster. So you can see how it's getting nice and mixed together. A little more flour mixture. Alright, so let that all come together. And I'm going to scrape it down. Alright, let's scrape it down one more time. And when I bake, I generally double recipes because that way I have some for our family and then some to share. So I'm going to mix it all together, shake out the flour from the beater. And I think that's all done. Now I'm going to spin this to get the dough off the beater. You can't do this too fast or else you'll end up wearing a batter. So you end up with an accidental taste test. So.
Dog won't mind.
So, I'm going to scrape this off. And then we're going to get set up to roll out the dough. So we'll be right back with you in just a minute. Alright, and now we're going to do I call it the assembly line process for our Snickerdoodles. And before we proceed any further, just please give us any feedback and comments in the comment field because we love feedback from you all. And ideas for future episodes, questions about the recipe, or just questions in general. And like and subscribe for this channel. And now we're going to scoop out several dough balls. I'm going to scoop out a bunch of dough balls. Then I will roll them in my hands to smooth them out. Then I will roll them in cinnamon sugar. Then I will place on the baking sheet. Then I will place it in the oven. So this process takes a little time, so just bear with us. So we're going to plop the dough. And now we will roll them prior to rolling them in cinnamon sugar.
So how many can you get on one plate?
Probably about 20. So we're just gonna roll and plop back down on the plate. Henry Ford had a great idea when he invented the assembly line, so I do cookies assembly line. Alright, let me wash my hands and then we'll roll them in cinnamon. And now we're back for the cinnamon sugar rolling. You plop your dough into the bowl and you can wiggle it around or you can use a spoon to coat it with the cinnamon sugar and put it on your sheet. You're going to do this with all of them. So make cinnamon sugar.
So it's just that simple. You just pop it in there and you spoon.
Yep. Baking does not have to be complicated. It's a little more labor intensive than the break and bake cookies you get from the store in the delis in the cold food section, but homemade cookies taste a lot better.
And don't taste like chemicals.
Yeah.
And another thing you can do is if you don't want to bake them all at the same time, you can basically get them up to this point where they're in the cinnamon sugar and then put them on a plate and freeze them flat. And then when they're frozen, put them in a zipper baggie in your freezer.
Ooh.
And then that way you can have fresh baked cookies, more often than just, when you have time to make them from start to finish. So these are going to spread out a little bit when they bake. So you want to at least have, a good 2 inches apart. So when they spread, they don't get up next to each other and cuddle and join hands.
And get stuck.
Yes.
And cuddle cookies.
Yes. And I did see a really cool trick you can use if you do end up having your cookies run together. You can put them, you get like a ring-shaped cookie cutter, and you can just shake them while they're still warm, and that smooths the edges so they're nice and more uniform shaped. If for any reason they're misshapen or they stick together. But just give your cookies space to spread out when they cook. And then that way you're less likely to have that happen. And this is a family favorite, Snickerdoodles. And apparently this recipe is like almost 200 years old. It's from the early 1800s.
Really?
Yeah.
Dang.
Who made them?
I don't remember.
The person's name's probably lost to time.
You can look at there's a little caption on the recipe in the cookbook. But
The person was probably named Snickerdoodle.
it's a fun name for a simple cookie. Okay, we're back and we have gotten all of the cookies rolled in their cinnamon sugar, and they make quite a bit. This is a double recipe. So I have 2 pans in the oven, 2 pans waiting to go into the oven, and one that just came out of the oven.
Oh, wow.
And as you can tell, they look beautiful. And when you space the cookies properly, they're not going to stick to each other. These two got a little cozy because somehow they slid next to each other. Maybe they were lonely. But anyway, you're supposed to take them directly from the sheet pan onto the cooling rack. And because of the amount of butter and shortening in this, it doesn't require a greased cookie sheet. And plus the texture on this one is kind of pebbly looking, so it keeps cookies from sticking.
So what do you do? What if there's someone says they don't have a cooling rack? What are they?
Well, most people should have a cooling rack because it adds extra space and it protects your countertops when you're cooling food. You could, of course, put them on a folded up towel, the cookie sheet, to protect your countertop, but you really need to have a cooling rack because that allows the air to circulate. So, and this cookie sheet is rather large, so it has almost more cookies than I have space. But I do have a double-decker cooling rack. I can add the extra one, but for now, I'm just going to double up on here.
Those look so good.
Yes, these are a family favorite, and they have a nice crinkle appearance. And they're crispy on the outside and soft on the inside. So,
Hey, that one's trying to escape.
yes, they're a little warm. So I'll show you what they look like. They're crispy on the outside and soft on the inside.
Oh, wow.
Man, that's one delicious
Yep.
looking cookie.
Yeah.
So these are great for snacking around home or packing for a treat to take to someone's house, or a cookie swap, or gift bags for your friends at work or neighbors. So one benefit of having a light colored sheet pan is that the bottoms don't get too dark. And if you do end up having darker pans, you can always use parchment to lift the cookies up off the pan, and that sometimes helps with the darkening of their bottoms. So, but again, the bottom should look more on the blonde side, so that way they're not overcooked. So anyway, thank you for joining us today, and please like and subscribe to my channel. And we welcome feedback and really appreciate your comments and suggestions in our videos. So we look forward to hearing from you, and please join us again in our next episode.
Thank you for watching Miss Cindy's Kitchen. To get more recipes like this one, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for notifications when new videos are uploaded. Share it out to your friends, family, neighbors, and leave us a comment to let us know how this recipe worked for you. And don't forget to hit that like button. Again, thank you for watching Miss Cindy's Kitchen.